guys, welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this cute diamond mesh or fishnet crochet bow. There are two sizes, but in this video I'm going to show you how to make the smaller one, this one, which is my favorite to be honest. But in the pattern which is linked down below, there will be instructions for the small one, the bigger one, and also for this crochet bow, which is normal mesh. So the mesh is like this, and in the diamond mesh the mesh is like this. They are a little bit different. I don't know if you can see. So this all will be in one pattern, which is linked down below. Video on how to make this bow is coming very soon. It will be for the bigger size of this. But in this video I'm going to show you how to make this one. So this is a scrap yarn project. I use just like 12 grams of sport weight yarn and 3.5mm hook, and it's a really quick project, really easy, so I hope you will like this. Also, I got a new camera for Christmas, so I decided to film this intro. Also because I have this wall of yarn, which I think is a great background for this video. Let me know if you like the intro or if you want me to go back to not showing my face at all. And let me know if you want some other videos from me, like vlogs or anything else. Please give this video a like if you find it useful or if you make this bow. And let's get into it. For this project you will need 15 grams of sport weight yarn. I am using Drops Safran, which is 160 meters for 50 grams, and I will use just this scrap. Then a 3.5mm crochet hook. You can use yarn needle and your yarn, but I use sewing needle and a thread. And then 2 stitch markers. Let's get started with the base of the bow. Begin by making a slip knot and then by chaining 100. If you are customizing your bow, remember that your starting chain needs to be a multiple of 3 plus 1. Now that we have our chain, let's move on to row 1. Start by chaining 4 more and turn in your work. Skip the first 7 chains, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then slip stitch into the next chain. I like to slip stitch in the bottom loop, but you can honestly do both. And this is your first diamond mesh done. Now just chain 4, so 1, 2, 3 and 4, and skip 2 chains, so 1 and 2, and then slip stitch into the next chain. Keep repeating this, so chain 4, skip 2 chains, and then slip stitch into the next chain all the way across until you have 3 chains left. So I have 3 chains left, and this is how my row 1 looks. It looks kind of weird, but gets better when you do row 2. Now just chain 2, skip 2 chains, and double crochet into the next chain, so into the last chain. And this is row 1 done. Let's begin row 2. Start by chaining 4 and turn in your work. After you chain 4 and turn your work, you will slip stitch into the space which you've made by chaining 4 in the row below. Then you will again chain 4 and slip stitch into the next chain 4 space, and you will repeat this until you have just 1 chain 4 space left. Now I have just 1 chain 4 space or mesh space left, so I will chain 2 and then double crochet into the last space. The double crochet can move a bit, but it's okay because we will do the border and it will stop. So for row 3, you will repeat the same instructions as for row 2. So start with chaining 4 and then turn your work. Then slip stitch into the next chain 4 space, and then again chain 4 and slip stitch into the next space. Continue working the instructions for row 2 a total of 6 times, or until you have 7 rows, or until the base is about 5 centimeters or 2 inches wide. This is how your base should look like now. Let's count the rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7 rows in total. So let's do the final row. Start by chaining 2 and then turn your work. Now slip stitch into the next chain 4 space, and that's the repeat for this row. So chain 2, then slip stitch into the next chain 4 space, and you will repeat this till the end of the row. Now I have just one chain 4 space left, so I will again chain 2 and then slip stitch into the last chain 4 space. And this is your base all done, so just cut your yarn and we will move on to the border. The border is done in 2 parts. First we will work along the longest edge and then along the remaining edges. So to start part 1, attach your yarn at the right corner of the longest edge, and for row 1 of the border we will simply slip stitch into every stitch along this edge. That basically means you will slip stitch into every chain that you did with your starting chain. And once you reach the end, you will simply chain 1 and turn your work. And remember that you shouldn't slip stitch into the 4 chains you did after your starting chain. So this is how row 1 of the border looks. Now just chain 1 and turn your work. And for row 2 we will slip stitch only into the back loops of row 1. It's easier to see if you look at the other side of your work after you turn, but you will slip stitch only into these loops that are further away from you. It can be quite difficult to put your hook there because the loops can be a little tight, so feel free to use a smaller hook, but make sure to pull your yarn a little bit more so that the tension is the same as with the larger hook. So just keep slip stitching into the back loops only till the end of this row, and after you are done with this row, just chain 1 and turn your work. And for row 3 we will repeat exactly the same process. We will slip stitch only into the back loops of row 2. And this is how part 1 of the border should look like. Let's get on to the part 2. I hope you like my drawing. So we will now crochet the border along the remaining edges. Start by chaining 1 and then slip stitch 2 times into the border you just made. So I will slip stitch right after the first braid and then right after the second braid. And now along the slanted edge, slip stitch evenly all the way to the corner. I like to make 2 slip stitches in each mesh space and 1 slip stitch in the mesh crossing, and I find that works great for me. But if your tension is different, you may have to do more or less slip stitches. You can do 1 slip stitch in the corner for more rounded corners or 2 slip stitches for sharper corners, but make sure the 2 slip stitches are really loose in the corners, otherwise it will be really hard to work into on the way back. And then along the shorter edge, just make 1 slip stitch in each chain or stitch. When you get to the other slanted edge, just repeat the instructions from the first one. Make sure the number of stitches are the same. And After this row, just chain 1 and then make 2 rows of back loop slip stitches as for the part 1 of the border. Once you are done, just cut your yarn and fasten off, and this is how your finished base with the border looks like. I already blocked mine and I recommend you do the same for the cleanest look. And now I am just weaving in the ends before I fold the bow. Now it's time to fold our bow. Start by folding the base in half with the wrong sides facing each other, and then fold it in half again. And this is where you want to sew. Mark the top and the bottom of the base with stitch markers through both layers, but make sure the length from the tip of the tail to the stitch marker is same on both tails, and also that the stitch markers are directly above each other. Now just sew along the marked line. As I said, you can use yarn needle and your yarn, or sewing needle and a thread. Put your needle through both layers and make a knot first, and after that sew along this line, but skip the mesh spaces and make sure you don't pull at your yarn much. Make sure you are sewing through the exact same mesh crossing on both layers. This will keep the layers aligned and prevent the bow from looking uneven. So insert your needle carefully into the mesh crossing, pull it through, then skip the mesh space and repeat that through the whole layer, and make sure you don't pull your yarn on the mesh spaces too much. Once you've sewn all the way along the marked line, you can remove your stitch markers, and now you have this fish shape. So take the big loop, center of the big loop, and align it with the sewn line, and then fold it from top to bottom, and then tie this center with some scrap yarn. Now you want to adjust your bow a little bit so it looks nicer. You have to tack on your tails a little bit down and adjust the loops a little bit so it looks better. The final step is making the center of your bow. So we are almost done. Start by making a slip knot and then chain 13, or as many as you need to fit around the center of your bow. When you have your 13 chains, chain 1 and turn your work, and now slip stitch in every chain till the end of this row. At the end of the row, chain 1 and turn your work, and for row 2 you will work slip stitches into the back loops only of every stitch, and after you are done with row 2 just chain 1, and you will repeat row 2 until you have a total of 6 rows. This is how the final center strip should look like. Now just cut your yarn and fasten off, and you can leave a little bit longer tail for seaming. Now wrap the strip around the center of your bow, covering the sewn section, and with the longer tail, sew the ends together at the back. After you are done with the sewing, you may have to adjust your bow a little bit more, but that's it. We are done with the bow. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye!